Hello YouTube friends. The picture that you're looking at is the picture of my great-grandfather John Fisher and his wife Margaret and their 11 children. I'm not sure when this picture was taken, and I'm not sure where it was taken. My great-grandfather John Fisher was born in Zurich, Switzerland in 1855. He married Margaret February 8th, 1874. John was a farmer, and they worked a farm somewhere near Zurich, Switzerland. But he was also a watchmaker. And as strange as it would seem, Margaret was also a watchmaker. I'm not sure if they had a little shop or if they worked for somebody else, but there was talk that they had made a watch together, and someone in the family, one of their children or children's children, had the watch at one time, but really nobody knows where it is now, if it is even still around. So in the picture, Margaret and John are sitting at the front, holding two young children. From left to right, the top row is Mary, their first child, their oldest son, John. Beside John is Sophia, and next to Sophia is Albert, and next to Albert is Elizabeth. In the front row, also from left to right, is Katie, Mabel. The little boy sitting on his father's knee is Charles, who is my grandfather. And the baby is Edna. The young man sitting beside his mother is Fred, and the little girl on the far right side is Celia. In 1885, John and Margaret decided to move to America. I don't know why. I don't know if things were not so good in Switzerland at that time, but they entered America in Pennsylvania, and then they went to Louisa County, Iowa, and they settled in the Cedar Rapids area. They had a farmhouse in Comonton, Iowa. I'm not sure if they owned it or if they rented it, but that's where 4 more children were born. They lived there for a few years, and in 1896, a diphtheria went through the area, and Mabel and Charles and Edna, the 3 youngest children, all contracted diphtheria. Mabel and Edna both passed away. Charles survived. Mabel was 5 years old, and Edna was less than a year old. So Mabel was the little girl sitting beside her father's leg, and the little baby Edna were the 2 that passed away. Charles, the little boy, my grandfather, sitting on his father's knee, survived. Early in the fall of 1897, my great-grandmother Margaret was stricken with an illness. I'm not sure what illness she had. I'm assuming it was something like consumption or one of those type of illnesses. She wasn't getting any better, so they decided to have her go to St. Luke's Hospital in Cedar Rapids. And she had some sort of operation. Again, I don't know what that operation was. And she seemed to be doing quite well, but then she got pneumonia. And she had complications set in from the pneumonia, and she died of pneumonia on the 28th of February, 1898. She was 44 years old. A while after Margaret passed away, John went back to Switzerland, and he took a second wife. Her name was Louise Dold-Waldner, and she was a friend of both his and Margaret's. They knew each other from when they lived there. And he brought Louise back with him to help him with his children and to be his wife and raise his children. In 1905, John and Louise decided to move to Canada. Don't know why that was. I don't know if there was other family members of John's had already gone to Canada. Like, I'm not sure what the reason for their move, but they moved to Canada in 1905 along with their two sons, Albert and Charles. They moved here with three other families, so I don't know if those families were relatives or just friends. I'm assuming they might have been acquaintances or relatives. With the other three families, they loaded up boxcars, and they brought with them 2 teams of mules and a team of horses, and all their personal belongings. They arrived by train in Plumas, Manitoba on March 23rd, 1905. When they got to Plumas, they had no place to go. They didn't know anybody, but somebody made a vacant house available to them. So they moved into a vacant house, and that's where they stayed until they rented a farm. This picture is the farm that they later purchased. They sold their horses, and they bought the farm with the money that they raised from their horses. And they lived on this farm for many years. Their son Albert got married. And when their son Albert got married, they decided to move into town. And so they moved into this home in town in Plumas. See if I can make it a little bit better. There we go. And actually this home still stands in Plumas today. It doesn't look quite the same. They've done over the years a lot of remodeling on it and things like that, but it's still there. And they lived in that house until they both passed away. My great-grandfather John died in March 16th, 1926. He was 71 years old. And Louise died November 9th, 1933. And they are both buried in the Plumas Cemetery, just outside of the little town of Plumas. My grandfather, Charles, he was actually born in Covington, Iowa. And as a young child, he wasn't very strong. After his two sisters had passed away and he had diphtheria, he was often sick. He wasn't a very strong child. But even though he wasn't strong, he had a will. He was a very feisty little fellow, and he had a lot of spark and a lot of energy, and he grew up fine, and he decided to farm himself in Plymouth as well. Actually, it wasn't in Plymouth, it was in a Tupper district, which is just northeast of Plymouth. He met my grandmother, Mabel Owens. She was from Palo, Iowa, which is very close to Covington, where my grandfather was born. I think they knew each other before he had moved to Canada. They had met. Perhaps they'd gone to school. I don't know. And he wanted to marry Mabel, and Mabel's father was not at all crazy about his daughter marrying this young, spunky fellow and moving away to Canada. But Grandpa convinced him, and they were married February 27th, 1917. And I have a picture of them. Not sure how good this picture is. It's not great. This is their wedding picture. It's actually not a very good picture. So they moved into a home. Grandpa was already here. I don't know if he was already on the farm. I think he was, in this East Tupper district. And this was their home. Oops, I gotta make that a little smaller so you can see it better. There we go. This was their home. And this was the home they lived in. He lived until he died. They raised their family there. They had a large family. They raised their children there. My grandmother died there. And Grandpa, he didn't die there, but he was an old man when they took him from this place, and this was their farm home. So I'm going to stop this video here, and the next video I'm going to do, I'm going to share with you some letters between Mabel and Charles, their courting letters. And then I'm going to take you on a different journey, Mabel and Charles's journey together. I hope you're enjoying this. To be continued.